years ago, I said yes to a job offer that quietly reshaped my life. My name is Hua Deep, and I'm the Italiarista at the Mann Family Early Childhood Center in West Los Angeles. Prior to this role, I was an art therapist and an artist in the world of mental and behavioral health. Stepping into the atelier, I saw how those identities could be woven into the role of Italiarista. It was a gradual rewiring of how I thought about my work, my relationships, and even myself.
The reshaping didn't come all at once. It showed up in small moments and quiet discoveries. This job has taught me that collaboration is about trusting others enough to not have all the answers. I've had mentors and colleagues challenge my thinking in ways that felt uncomfortable in the moment, and it helped me grow. It also reshaped my own rhythm as a person. I've started to listen differently. Instead of listening to respond, I listen to learn. I'm listening for what is being said through actions, materials, drawings, and questions. I'm learning to slow down, to observe before intervening, and to wonder before answering. Saying yes to this job was the beginning of a journey that continues to stretch and humble me. It has reshaped who I am from the inside out. In the fall of 2024, I attended a conference hosted by the Paradigm Project. I remember going back to LA feeling deeply moved, energized by the ideas I heard, the people I met, and the vision that was shared.
And yet, alongside the inspiration, I carried an overwhelming feeling of anxiety, wondering how will I bring all of this back to my community of educators in a way that captures the awe and the possibility that I felt. I've always been someone who loves the big conversations, the lectures, the frameworks, the why behind the work. I find connection in disagreement and dialogue that requires me to stretch. I learn most about myself as a person, an artist, and an educator when I'm asked to question what I thought I knew, and in doing so, I either stand more firmly in my values or open up to a new way of seeing. After the conference, Lisa Plotkin and Ellie Eschel of Stories from the Field invited me to share a story of my own. At first, I hesitated. What could I offer that would be meaningful? Like many of us, I felt tired, overextended, and unsure if I could take on more. But reflecting on the process, I'm reminded of how stories often unfold before we even realize they've begun. They don't always follow a linear path. Sometimes you have to live your way into the story before you can name what it is.
In the atelier, possibility floats in the air, and every corner hums with questions not yet answered. If you pay close enough attention, you may encounter quiet transformations underway. It is a space where children are not told what to do, but rather they are encouraged to wonder and invited to try. It's a living space where relationships are constantly forming between children, between thoughts and materials, and between ideas and the hands that hold them. Here, materials are collaborators in a dance where wonder meets curiosity. Through dialogue and observation, meaning takes root. As the Atelierista, I have the privilege of existing in this space as part guide, part co-researcher, and part weaver of worlds. My role is not merely to whisper instructions, but rather to listen and wait. When a child steps into this space with intention, I lean in with them. With a painter's patience and a poet's ear, I listen closely, not only to the words the children speak, but to the stories their hands are telling. I offer materials as tools and companions for thought. I hold the studio like a question. What if? This is the beginning of a story about a deep and unfolding inquiry. It's a tale of failure that isn't final, about trees that speak in metaphors, and how learning often grows sideways before it grows tall. Lucas's journey with the tallest tree did not begin with a finished idea, but with curiosity. What follows is a story of how this spark became a conversation, that conversation became a construction, and how that construction became a mirror for what it means to learn with your hands, heart, and humility. Come closer, look with wonder, there's something growing here. Lucas is a sensory-driven child whose world comes alive through touch. His material of choice in the atelier is clay. He enjoys the cool, squishy texture between his fingers and the way it yields to his touch, yet can still hold shape and structure. While working at the clay table, Lucas and Shai were curious about slip. We had recently explored it together, this muddy, magical mixture of clay and water that acts like glue. We talked about how artists use it to attach pieces of clay by scoring the surfaces, making tiny marks that give the slip something to hold on to. The boys were fascinated by how texture and connection were needed for the clay to bond. Shai noticed, "It's making them stick so good, they're even stronger together." "The little scratches fit into each other just right," said Lucas. Around this time, the atelier began to take on the quiet spirit of the forest, inspired by the holiday of Tu B'Shvat. The walls washed in the soft light of an immersive projection of towering sequoias stretching skyward. Root systems were woven through photographs and pages of books. Branches gathered from nature walks reached out across the room, and leaves settled gently on tabletops and shelves as if carried in by a breeze. The space breathed differently, a little slower and deeper, making space for the pause between heartbeats and allowing time for ideas to take root. Lucas had been exploring the texture of clay through touch, using the scoring tool to make scratches in the clay, smoothing the surface with his fingers, scoring again, and then testing the slip. He noticed the way the clay welcomed the slip and how it clung and connected. After a few weeks of revisiting his tree in the atelier, Lucas came in one day with a new purpose. He began to build what he called the tallest tree. He described his intention as a tree so tall it reaches for the sky. As the base took shape, Lucas began to stack coils upward. Sometimes it collapsed and he got frustrated. Each time, he would quietly observe the failure, adjust his strategy, and begin again. Lucas wondered, do the roots have to be strong so the tree doesn't fall? He was building more than a sculpture. He was constructing meaning. He tested his theory by creating new structures, brushing slip between them, and reinforcing areas that seemed weak. At one point, he leaned in, looking closely at the foundation of his tree, and nodded in satisfaction. "Now, it's not just one part doing the work. All the roots help each other," he said. The tree didn't grow quickly, but it grew thoughtfully. Lucas learned to feel the balance with his hands before adding a new piece. His tree grew sideways, then upward, twisting and spiraling. It curved, leaned, and branched in unexpected ways, but it held. He would often pause and then move each new addition in different directions, sensing where the strain was, and adjusted his strategy to support the weight. He continued to work for weeks on his tree, often inviting others to see or help, but never relinquishing his intention. Eventually, the tree stood tall and wide, its roots deep and interwoven, and its trunk steady. Its branches arched and lifted by unexpected supports. It was not a perfect tree. It was a tree with possibility, a tree built by problem solving, persistence, and the wisdom of clay. I realized Lucas had created more than a tree. He had created an understanding. Strength comes from connection, growth requires patience and persistence, and even sideways movement is still part of reaching up. This is the quiet truth of the atelier, that a child's hands can carry deep wisdom. Clay can become a teacher, and sometimes the tallest trees are not the ones that grow the fastest, but the ones that remember to root themselves deeply first. What Lucas showed me through fingers caked in clay and questions carved in curiosity is that growth begins where we can't always see it. Strong roots don't just anchor trees, they ground ideas. And sometimes the most important work is done below the surface. As I watched Lucas navigate the collapse of his branches, reimagine the structure, and adapt his tree to carry its own weight, I was struck by how his hands carried knowledge long before his words could name it. Observing Lucas allowed me to slow down and ask questions, not just of Lucas, but of myself and of the environment that we shared. What does it mean to support a child in holding the weight of their own ideas? How do I make space for failure to become a form of insight and not a stopping point? How do children show me, through gesture, hesitation, material, and repair, what they are ready to explore next? What kinds of learning become possible when I resist the urge to correct and instead choose to witness?
Starting something new, especially something as layered and complex as Reggio-inspired work, can feel impossible. I wonder if this is what many educators experience when they first encounter it. We see the documentation, the aesthetics, the work coming out of Reggio Emilia, and it's not uncommon to think, wow, that's beautiful, but I could never do that. Perhaps even when you try, it can feel like you're falling short of some invisible benchmark.
In my 4 short years of being in this role, I've come to believe what matters most isn't perfection. It's your presence. It's being grounded in the moment, even when the moment is messy or unclear. It's listening to children, not just to their words, but to their gestures, their silences, and their repeated fascinations. It's building trust with your collaborators, the kind that allows for vulnerability and honest conversations, and for taking risks together. It's returning to the work again and again, with intention, care, and with the humility to keep learning. It's not about mirroring what's happening in Reggio Emilia down to the detail. It's about finding your rhythm, your community's stories, and honoring the small, rich moments that happen every day in your classrooms. Your presence is what gives these moments meaning. When we are attuned, when we are curious, open, and reflective, that's where transformation lives.
The story I shared from the atelier is the result of collaboration, long conversations, revisions, feedback, and generous mentorship from Lisa Ellie and Sandy Lanes, among others. It's also the result of time spent watching, wondering, questioning, and connecting. My hope is that after viewing this, you won't think, that's beautiful, but I could never create something like that. Instead, I invite you to slow down, look closely, and trust that something meaningful will emerge from your own context too. In truth, I'm sure it already is.